I am sitting here today with Ed Humphreys, who has filed a C1 to run for the governor of the state of Idaho. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, Greg, I appreciate the opportunity. And we're on the campaign trail, as you can see. So we're sitting on the campaign trail right now, even with tables being packed up around us.
Yeah. So, if you hear noise, the campaign is packing up and ready to move on to the next place. So, so let's first kind of just briefly talk about you're running for the top elected spot in the state of Idaho, right? Very few people will ever attain the title of governor of the state of Idaho. So what kind of ultimately led you? I mean, there's definitely decision making that goes on in your head when you're like, I'm going to run for governor of the state of Idaho. What was that decision like for you and your family to make that leap, to file that C1 paper and make that run?
Yeah. For me, I was just freaked out at what's going on right now. And I think you could probably relate in some ways now. You know, it feels like we're just losing our country's identity entirely. And people, they can feel something in their heart, something's wrong right now. I feel it too. And I think that it's because we're slowly adopting socialism and communism into our daily lives. And we're finding that to be acceptable. And I sit on the executive board of the state Republican Party, and I think that the Republican Party lays some claim to being the party that supports the American dream, but I'm finding that our party's getting very comfortable with socialist policies, and I feel like we're becoming the party of socialism light. So you ask, why run for governor? And the reality is because our state government has had an erosion of checks and balances like a lot of state governments and our federal government has had, and right now the governor's in control of the budgeting process. We can argue about, appropriation bills being born in the House or whatever else, but at the end of the day, if you're going to talk policy, it comes from the governor's office. And I'm a finance guy, and if you want to bring something to an end, quit funding it, and that'll bring it to an end pretty quick because these social justice activists, they don't do this for volunteer work. They do it because there's a paycheck in it. And every time we pay our taxes, we pay and foot the bill for the destruction of America and for our shared values. You just can't sit back and let that happen. You can, but you can't then say you're a patriot. You can't say you love your country and then at the same time be comfortable with footing the bill to destroy it. So, governor, through the power of the line item veto, because of the budgeting process and everything else, the governor is the one who's really empowered to make a change in direction. And that's what the root of the word means. If you look at the Latin or Greek root of the word, governor means the person who steers the ship's rudder. So governor isn't managing 25,000 employees. This is the same thing Reagan had to deal with when he ran for governor in 1966 because he was a B-rate actor. He had never even supervised anybody in his life. And when he ran for governor, it was kind of that education process to remind people the governor chooses direction. And I think we're on the wrong direction right now, and I think that we can run a statewide campaign and pull it off, and I think we're doing a pretty incredible job so far.
Okay. And the family, they were like okay with it, or you're nuts, but we're going to go along with you anyway?
We kind of got pulled into it. This was something other folks had mentioned I ought to consider because at the time there was no other conservative that was going to jump in. Everybody was thinking that we just had to accept the fact that moderates rule the day, and we just got to accept socialism in our government, and you can't beat it. And so we don't have many conservative players on the field that can wage a campaign and actually win. And so people were talking to me about it. I talked to my wife about it, and initially it was it's a nice idea. It's nice when people talk to you and think you're capable of something like that. But we just started praying about it, and we thought, well, if this is what the Lord wants for us and our family, then there's a few things that'll happen to tell us that this is realistic and it's not just our egos or arrogance or anything like that. And the reality is, everything happened and then some to make me think this was more than possible as far as, getting the opportunity to sit down and see what our fundraising potential was. And I haven't heard the number from this event, but I think today's the day we've raised over $100,000 since we launched about a month ago. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah. That's $100,000, which is a lot, for brand new campaign up and starting, you know, a lot of people are going to have questions. Obviously, there's going to be reports out.
Oh yeah,
you got to
they're
follow
already
the reports. But what do you think? I mean, where are most of your donations coming from currently, as far as like small donors, big donors, businesses, PACs? You know, typically.
Well, I wouldn't group the donor, but I would group the donation size, right? Because the donors run the gamut, but people are so freaked out what's going on right now. You see people making contributions to campaigns now like they never have before, and amounts they never have before. I've had middle-class families write $1,000 checks. That does not happen. I mean, middle-class family write $1,000 check. So I would say, you know, our donation size, I mean, it ranges. We got people go on the website, make $10, $20 donation, and we have people that come to these events and they write $1,000, $5,000 checks. So it runs the gamut.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get into some policy positions, and we kind of have typically in the past we just, you know, reach out to the readers and say what are some of the issues you think that are most important. So with that, and you can answer these as long or as short as you want.
Mm-hmm.
But Second Amendment.
I've been told I got to keep my answers shorter. So
yeah. Typically in interviews, shorter answers can be a lot better. Depends on what it is. You know, if I ask you about the Second Amendment, and then you could do a very short or a long answer for that. So the right to keep and bear arms, that's one of the biggest topics here in the state of Idaho. What are your beliefs and thoughts, and what do you believe you would do as governor?
Second Amendment is simple. All of our other rights are contingent upon it, and people are getting this confused. They think the Second Amendment is to defend yourself from criminals, but you have to look at the Second Amendment through the eyes of the people who laid the foundation of it. And the reality is they knew it's inherent in the nature of government to grow and to want to dominate our daily lives and take more power unto itself. And we have a situation now where the government has grown way out of the bounds it was ever envisioned to be. Think about it this way: the states breathe life into the federal government, but now the federal government runs everything. The creature has become bigger than the creator. But the Second Amendment is a check and balance on that kind of power. The reality is when you have a populace that is heavily armed, there is a lot of accountability there. It's just the darn truth of it. You can't get away with the same things you could in a country where people aren't armed. China being a great example, or a lot of communist countries. The government can do whatever the heck they want, because at the end of the day, they control the means to enforce whatever laws they want to pass. But in America, the idea is that we should choose how we're governed, and you can't take our ability to choose away from us, despite all the election integrity issues we've just had. So the Second Amendment, we have to maintain it, and we have to respect the fact that our right to own firearms shouldn't be infringed. Now, some people, you know, want to get really crazy with it, but at the end of the day, I think that we have strong checks in our state constitution. Our state constitution has one of the better checks in it, right? Because we have great gun activists in the state that have promoted it and made sure that's happened. So we live in a state where you can't require the licensing of firearms and registering ammunition and special taxes on it. But even with those protections, you have federal agencies like the ATF appointing their new director. And the ATF's director, he's pretty much an avowed gun grabber. The guy thinks he wants to use the power of that bureaucracy to take our freedoms away from us. But there are other states that ignore federal agencies like ICE, right? There are other states that ignore federal drug laws. I don't understand why we can't try that as conservatives. I think Idaho really can lead the way on some of those issues, and we can start to say, hey, if other states can ignore federal law, then we're going to actually do the opposite of that. We're going to honor the Constitution and ignore these federal agencies when they act unconstitutionally. We have to protect our ability to bear arms. It's vital to maintaining all the other rights that we enjoy.
Okay. Healthcare. Healthcare is a big topic on both sides of the political aisle. The cost of healthcare continues to rise and rise and rise. How do we tackle this issue as a state, and what would you do or try to do as governor to bring down the cost of healthcare?
I got to be candid with you. Healthcare is one issue where the governor is going to run into a lot of hiccups. Anything that they try to do. with healthcare, we're right now dealing with onerous restrictions, onerous regulations from the federal government again, right? So our congressional delegation needs to be supported to continue to find better solutions to healthcare. But we now have a DO program here in Idaho. We got the Idaho College of Medicine now, and I think solutions like that are better than to give us more supply of healthcare professionals than us farming them out to Washington State University, right, and their programs. But there's a few key things that we can do to maintain and keep healthcare costs low, and it comes down to things like occupational licensing. So we have nurse practitioners and nurse anesthetists that enjoy a wider scope of practice than they do in other states like Utah. That actually helps keep our healthcare costs down because we can make the decision whether we sit down with an MD, DO, or a nurse practitioner, right? And so that stuff needs to be maintained. The only way to do it is if you're going to stand up to special interest groups, though, because this is exactly what these occupational special interest groups do. They advocate for all these licensing requirements and all these restrictions on other professions to then force people to do business with them. That I don't think that's appropriate.
Okay. Lands. The lands issue is another hot topic here in Idaho. The battle over whether the state should control the federal lands that the federal government currently controls. What are your thoughts on the control of state land and federal land?
You're right. The federal government controls over 61% of our lands in this state. So a lot of people think geographically Idaho is really large. We're actually a fraction of the size that we think we are. And it's even been to our detriment in countless ways. And mind you, I got to preface what I say. Look, we all love the outdoors. We all want to maintain the land that we live in and respect it. But the environmentalist argument has really become a political football to allow socialists to essentially shut down industries and push more people to be on the dole and relying on the government. Here's a perfect example. We used to have in this state a vibrant logging timber industry. That has been effectively decimated now because we're not allowed to manage our own lands and to use the resources the good Lord gave us. And instead, we're not allowed to harvest all the resources we have. Instead, we got to let it burn to the ground. And we see it every stinking year. There'll be in August, the sky will be filled with smoke, and it'll be another forest burn down that we weren't allowed to touch at all. And they use these arguments that we're going to be, the earth is going to heat up and we're all going to be underwater if we dare log at all. But the reality, there are people moving in the state that have been able to stand on the same rock, on the same beach for the last 50 or 60 years. And when I was going through school, I don't know if it was the case for you, but I know it was the case for a lot of other people. I was told we were all going to be underwater by now. Like that's what we were told growing up. We're all going to be underwater because of global warming and because of logging, and all the forests were going to be gone. It's special interest science. These special interest groups, they create this science to advance their political agenda. So I think that we need to start really pushing back. I think we need to allow companies to responsibly harvest resources here in Idaho. Same thing, we have rare earth minerals that exist in this state that don't exist in any other state in the country. And some of these rare earth minerals, like antimony, for instance, over 80% of it is in Russia and China. These are resources our country needs for our own national security. Idaho has them. We're not allowed to touch them here. It's outrageous.
Okay. Education. Education's another major topic. A lot of people with a lot of different views on how to tackle the education issue. There's always the talk about Idaho's teacher pay and teachers aren't paid enough, according to some say that they're paid too much. What do you think is the biggest issue facing the education system here in Idaho, and is there anything you could do as governor, or maybe as governor with the legislature, to try and tackle some of the education issues?
This is one of the biggest parts of my platform. I'd say the two biggest parts of my platform is I want to abolish the income tax entirely, but the other one is school choice. We're a young family, and education is important to us, and we want we want schools to educate our kids so they can reach for the very heights of their own personal potential. But our current education system, as it's set up, will not deliver that. And it's not the fault of the teachers. We all have teachers as friends. They're in our family. They do an incredible job. They don't do it for the money. Their heart is set on it, on education. And school choice is actually going to do the most for teacher pay than anything else you could make. You could try and formulate, like these boring career ladders and all this garbage that's being pushed now. Let me tell you how school choice looks. We need to have a robust system of charter and private schools to supplement the institutional K through 12 model. And if we have a voucher system or education savings accounts, we can figure that stuff out later, but we'll say vouchers for the sake of argument. Think of it this way. Right now we pay about $7,400 a year on average per student per school year. So if instead we said, and let's say you even reduced it, and maybe we don't have to, but again, for the sake of argument, say we did a $5,000 voucher per student. I want people to choose how and where their kids get educated so that they can continue to perpetuate their beliefs, right? If you want your kids to understand how this country was founded on the Judeo-Christian ethic and you want to continue to perpetuate your beliefs, you should be empowered to do so and send your kids to a school that promotes your values, your beliefs. And if you had a $5,000 voucher, I think we also could really support homeschool families. I would like to see more people homeschool their kids because right now I'm worried that we're seeing the disintegration of the family, and that is going to destroy this country. If we empower families to be able to homeschool with vouchers without onerous regulations or anything like that, think how powerful it would be if you had a family that had 4 kids, they cash in these $5,000 vouchers. That's $20,000 in vouchers. How many more families would opt to homeschool their kids if they had that kind of support? I think they should. They pay into the darn system and they don't get much benefit from it. That money should go to support their families. And the state constitution mandates that we're to provide a thorough system of education in this state. So that's why I think vouchers are the likeliest way to go. It's not that you can choose whether or not to pay in. Everybody's got to pay in. It's in the Constitution. And so if we're going to call it, and if I'm going to call myself a constitutionalist, then we got to honor it. That doesn't mean that the state constitution shouldn't be amended in certain areas in certain ways, but overall we should honor it and respect it. And vouchers do that. And so if people want to send their kid to a Catholic school, they should be able to cash their voucher in at a Catholic private school, or if they want to take them to a classical Christian academy, they should be empowered to do that. But most importantly is what's it going to do for education and for teachers. In this way, teachers can suddenly say, hey, I'm going to buy my own building and I'm going to take in 20 students. That's $100,000 in vouchers. They can then choose their own benefits and they can own a building and pay down the mortgage, build equity. How powerful would that be for teachers? They would build real wealth in their own life, and we could choose what school fits our values. So if people want to take their kids to the crazy leftist Marxist school that's going to teach them that their kids are responsible for slavery and ought to pay for reparations, then let the socialists take their kids to a socialist school. And if I want my kids to learn that this is the greatest country on earth because it was founded on timeless principles and I want to perpetuate my belief in those principles, then let me send my kid to whatever darn school that I want to, and then we will have real diversity, which is diversity in thought. It's diversity in worldview. And people can think differently. This is okay. We'll survive if people think differently, and you'll have the free exchange of ideas. So I think it addresses the teacher pay question. I think it addresses what we should be concerned about, which is what are our children learning, right? How are they being molded to fit in and improve society? And I think it empowers parents. So we need, in the governor's office, we need a champion for school choice because it's going to be a total slog. It's going to probably be of my whole platform, probably be the biggest fight will be school choice. But I'm gonna pick that fight every day.
Okay. All right. we'll do two more real quick, and then we'll get into our last segment there. So another topic that has been coming up, and there's actually a lawsuit pending in the Idaho Supreme Court right now, is the issue of ballot initiatives. And, should they be less restrictive, more restrictive, abolished completely? There's a kind of a wide range of ideas and thoughts right now on the ballot initiative process. Where does Ed Humphreys as governor stand on the issue of ballot initiatives?
I would make them more restrictive, but I wouldn't abolish it. And by restrictive, I mean this. A ballot initiative, it should be representative of our entire state. People rightfully are concerned about the state of Ada. They should be. I mean, look at Oregon, look at Washington. You got one stinking county in the whole state that dominates the rest of the state. But we have to honor that geography is as important in politics as population is. That's the whole idea behind each state having two senators, right? You have a chamber that's representative of geography. You have a chamber that's representative of population. We can't forget this if we want to be a republic. When we consider the ballot initiative, you can't just go into a handful of counties and collect all these signatures and then pass some measure by 50 plus 1% vote that ends up affecting all the other areas as well. Now, the question is, well, why wouldn't you just abolish the ballot initiative? I wouldn't do that either, because at the end of the day, I believe power should be with the people. And there are times where politicians will punt and they won't address the tough issues. And for those things, I think having ballot initiatives is important. I would maintain that, but it needs to be maintained in a way that's representative of our whole state, not just a handful of counties.
Okay. So the last policy question, and then we'll kind of get into the last segment here. The issue of abortion versus pro-life. Mm-hmm. And I know you had made a post on your campaign page about a past abortion issue, and so I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of explain what Ed for Governor looks like on the abortion issue, and then maybe address that. 'Cause that was something that came up a number of times. People said, hey, Ed posted this, and mm-hmm. And so we wanted you to have the opportunity to talk about that, explain what the facts are behind that, and then let us know where you're at now.
Yeah, we got the biggest human rights crisis in our country's history happening with abortion. The reality is, since we've determined that it's acceptable to kill babies, we're missing over 60 million people in this country. There are empty chairs in every room with people that never got their opportunity. And if you believe in the power of individuals, it's because you believe in their potential, their ability to make a positive impact on the world around them. So I have to ask, out of the 60 million people that this country has lost to abortion, is it possible that one of those 60 million would have cured cancer? I think it's more than possible, or provided any other incredible new innovation. What are we missing from the cultures, the sciences, the arts? Because we're missing 60 million people. And I think that we need to address it, and I think we need to stop that human rights crisis. I think there will be a time in our country's future where we'll look back on these days and we'll be ashamed. It'll be like slavery. We'll be ashamed of what we've been doing. So now with that, people are always quick to jump on and call anyone a hypocrite that stands up for it. But we got to be honest here. And in my campaign, I'm open about it, because I think the fact that I have lived on the other side of the tracks actually gives me the opportunity to relate to people, unlike a career politician that's been doing this for 20 plus years. 13 years ago, I was living in a trailer park in western Colorado, right? And I didn't grow up in a real Christian home. I wasn't baptized until I think I was 23 or 24. So yeah, I lived a very different life before. And I lived a life where it was whatever society said was okay was okay. There was no right or wrong. It was all relative, and that's unfortunate, because that's becoming a common notion amongst youth across the country. And so yeah, I participated in that horror like so many other people sadly have, because I was being dumb and being around people I shouldn't, and doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. And I understand the arguments more than about anyone else can, because I was worried that, I wasn't going to have, I wasn't going to be able to enjoy my life, and I wasn't going to be able to do the things I wanted to do, and this, that, and the other. But the reality is there is now someone else missing from this earth that's not going to have their chance to do those same things that I wanted for myself. And I could have made different decisions so that it never got to that point. So it is sad, but I think that people need to realize all these politicians they're looking at that look so polished and so incredible, they hire marketing firms and these PR firms to brush up their image. Why don't we start supporting candidates that just tell the truth? No, I've not lived a perfect life. Far from it. Look, I've done a lot of really stupid things, but at the end of the day, I've learned from them, and we're a country that believes in second chances. Not for everything, but so here I am preaching that cause, that I want to protect preborn children. And the other thing that I had a son that was born 4 weeks early, and I was in the NICU for a week, and I saw other babies that were born very early. And it's heartbreaking when you realize that in our country now we're starting to say that those aren't babies. We give them a special term, like it's okay then to terminate them. So look, I want to champion this issue, not because I'm unblemished, not because I'm perfect, because it's the right thing to do.
No. What took you from I think a lot of people talk about pivot points, when you kind of shift in your life from being in one place to all of a sudden a completely different place. From helping pay for an abortion to now being a pro-life person. I mean, was there a specific point? Was it the birth of your kid? Some people will do that. They'll have a kid and say, hey, when I had my first kid, I realized, holy crap, I'm definitely pro-life. Or for some people, it's a policy thing. Very different for everybody. So what was kind of your pivot point, if you will, on when you realized, hey, I'm definitely not in this camp anymore, but I'm in this camp?
Yeah, it's very personal. So it's kind of tough.
And you don't have to.
I want to answer because it's a fair question. But it was when I was getting baptized. Because remember, I had been surrounded by the wrong crowd. When I got the opportunity to be in the oil field, to be a roughneck on drilling rigs, that was an opportunity where I got to totally change my station in life, right? And I got to go from, like I said, surviving, right, paycheck to paycheck, run down vehicles, everything that comes with it, right, to making almost six figures a year, working only 6 months of the year. That was a huge shift in my personal life, and it allowed me to start to I guess just see more close up how you can change your life economically, but you can still just be doing all the same stuff. And I really felt a pull to get baptized. There's a lot going on. We won't get into it today, but sure. I just wanted to walk away and turn and close that chapter of my life and start in a new direction. Be around people who, didn't need to get drunk wherever they went, right? And just be around different people. And so I started reading the scriptures, and you do have a change of heart when you study the scriptures, not just read them, but when you study the scriptures. And I felt that calling to get baptized. And part of my church, when you're going to go get baptized, is you have to talk about your sins. And that was the first time in my life that I ever actually talked about it, because it was like a non-issue. It was like, it is what it is, we're moving on, right? And then to sit down and sit across the table from someone and talk about the issue through the lens of Heavenly Father and His love for us, that's game changing. And I think that was the moment where I realized, like, wow, and that's what's scary about it too, is because it is so wrong and it has become so normal. That should scare everyone.
Okay. Last question, and one of the other things, I guess, questions that people I've seen from our readers is, how old are you?
I'm 30. I'll turn 31 in a week, though. So I'm going to take that year. I'm 31.
Yeah, there you go. So you're obviously very young.
Yeah.
And some people are going, hey, why in the world is this 30-year-old shooting for the top spot in the state? Why go for governor? Why not start at legislator, county commissioner, or mayor, or something like that? I mean, what do you say to those people that say you're too young, you're not experienced enough? It's you need to start somewhere else and then work your way up to governor.
Yeah, this is so, and it's funny because I thought it was something I was going to have to answer for every day, and then come to find out people love my age because it's so different than what folks are used to. And so when I get on the radio, the phone starts ringing off the hook, and people come to these events because they think this is different. But what I would say is judging anyone on age when it comes to politics, it's just un-American. It's the darn truth. It's un-American. This country is a country founded by young patriots with a vision. I say it all the time because people see these pictures of these men in white wigs and they think they understand about our founding, but 19 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were in their 20s and 30s. Thomas Jefferson was 33 years old when he authored that document. Thomas Jefferson never wore King George's crown before he decided he was going to author that document and participate in our war for independence. That's the idea, is that if you want something new, something revolutionary, you need young people with zeal, with passion and drive that are going to put it on the line to get it done. And that's exactly what I've done. I walked away. I was managing almost $40 million book of business. I just walked away from all that to run for governor. And some people can dismiss me and say it's because I'm arrogant or I'm some hotshot. When you get to know me, I think you'll realize that I very clearly understand that my success is going to be determined by my ability to surround myself with wise counsel. And that process isn't done yet, but I feel like we have been pretty successful in that. I don't know it all. I don't have every answer, and I'm not so arrogant as to think that I'm the most qualified person in Idaho to run Idaho. But the reality is that if you want a firebrand, a fighter for the American dream, then you ought to at least hear what I have to say, because my family lived under and fled from communism. And so when I see that same thing being adopted in, whether it's the Republican Party, whether it's in our state government, you have to know that I will stop at nothing to fight that. That threat is very real to me. So I think people should judge me more on what my principles are and what do I want to accomplish, and less on age. Because if we're going to start saying age is the measure of your qualifications, then we'd have to admit that Joe Biden is one of the most qualified presidents in American history. That guy's an idiot. He can't even find his way through his own home. We're going to act like Joe Biden is incredibly qualified because of his age. It's a ridiculous notion.
Okay. All right. That's all I've got. So what we typically do at the end is we'll have you address the camera and then just give people kind of your typical campaign speech where they can find your website to learn more about you and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. For those who want to support this movement, who are sick and tired of career politicians going back election after election, then I'd ask for you to at least consider supporting me or looking into what I have to say. So visit edforidaho.com. You can see the platform. You can see what we're up to and some of our upcoming events. And we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're putting out, in my opinion, the best content in the state. And we're bringing a lot of awareness to issues that are happening here in Idaho that aren't being discussed, but should.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.